Maybe this one can work. All right. See if anything is showing up. Interesting. I have still showing 2 streams. All right, let's see if I've got okay. All right, it's looking good here. It's looking good here. Let me go take a look at what is going on with the other stream. Is still okay. Got a notice to them over there. My apologies, everybody. What a pain in the butt. Let's say thank you to the people who made it over to this one. Florida Vapes, thank you for joining us. Justin, dude, Scott, thanks for joining us again. Gormy Gorn, unsubbed, I completely understand. Rick Crawford, somebody with a very long name. Michael Daunt, thank you for joining us. Tracy, hey, welcome back. Corn Dog, Dakota Simon, Florida Vapes, I think I said hello. Clint Fox, Axe, thank you for making it over. Black Rose 397, thank you. Sorry for all the trouble. Crimson, Vape Geek, howdy. Alex Medrano, dude. Will Billy Vapes, thank you. Fog Dog, Justin Gallo, John Bullock. Oh, no, to Tracy, 15 minutes? I'd be mad as hell if anyone did that. Definitely apology time. Jake from Maine, what up, dude? LK, what's up? Lewis Knight, isn't that the same as LK? Two different people, though, I see. Saint Jacques, hello. Dave J. Conlon, welcome, everybody. Let's dive into things. I have got the Vindicator 21 with the Kennedy. Now, this has got the copper button and contact. What I'm going to be doing, I've ordered the copper housing for this, and I'm going to do then the full copper base test because this was Samsung 30T in here. This came in at about 4.5 watts, 4.4 watts of power loss. That equals the loss in the clutch, and Kennedy felt that the copper housing would give better performance, so I've ordered the housing for this one. Haven't vaped yet today because I got 3 stations running, one right here, 2 in the other room, but I am totally psyched for my, what is it, 9-month-old stash now of Razhol. We'll be trying that later after dinner. After this show, the testing stops, and just have vape and coffee after dinner. I've also got the cute little BC4 from Xtar. Now, it may look a little tiny. That's because it is a AA lithium and nickel metal hydride dedicated charger, which I agreed to test because I agree with the philosophy of dedicated chargers like this. I think the vast majority of people will use one or the other. I know there's some crossover, flashlight users who vape and stuff like that, but you can just get a less expensive charger, have less setup grief, simpler interfaces by having one charger for the 1.5 volt, 1.2 volt cells, and another charger for the lithium ions. So I agreed to take a look at this one. What's interesting is these 1.5 volt cells, there is no lithium ion. Well, you can make it theoretically, but it's a pain in the ass. Why am I, are you guys getting a lot of flicker on the screen in the background? And oh, I was blocking the light with my hand too. It's gonna be a long night, folks. Um, no 1.5 volt lithium chemistry. What they do is, I'm going to take this apart. What a lot of cells do that are rechargeable 1.5 volt lithium ion is they put in a smaller cell and a small circuit board here, and they regulate down that 3.7, 4.2 volt fully charged down to 1.5 volts to simulate an alkaline, essentially making it the equivalent of a rechargeable alkaline. But that takes away capacity compared to using like a 1.2 volt nickel metal hydride. So it'll be interesting. I can see this turning into a bottomless pit. I don't know if I want to go into it and do a lot of 1.5 volt, 1.2 volt testing, but we'll see what that turns into. And that is vaping and stuff like that. Quick reminder, battery space Mooch for anytime you want to get my attention. You don't need a hashtag. You don't need an @ symbol or anything like that. Just battery space Mooch. Okay. Yeah, ACC 1079. Yeah, cup of coffee was going to be very welcomed. Total zoo afternoon of testing and paperwork. Dallas Vapor. Hey, Mooch. Glad I could catch you. Seriously think YouTube is trying to do some funny business when it comes to vaping channels? I have problems viewing live shows, just buffers. Yeah, I think it's just because everyone on the planet is at home watching YouTube and Netflix and et cetera and so forth. I I don't think it's the kind of thing where they went through the effort to lower priority to stream some vapors or something like that because I'm a battery channel, not a vaping channel. So, for me to get zapped, I think it's just either everyone in this building is watching internet, so I have trouble. But every time I've ever done a speed test, never ever a problem. So I don't know if it was me here. Now, it could be something like whatever servers used in the New York area. I mean, there's millions of people all watching videos right now in the New York City area. And YouTube is like, look, it's a pandemic. We're not spending $100 million to upgrade it. And then when the pandemic is over, or tails down a lot more, I think it'll always be here until we get a vaccine. Um, we're not going to upgrade the infrastructure that won't be used later, and they just leave it. Uh, it has been worse in the past month or so. Okay, tonight's topic, since about now is when we normally get into it. Samsung, along with LG, have been getting a lot more proactive about getting vapors and flashlight users, to be honest, and power bank users, anyone using their loose cells, the individual cells, from using them. They were never meant to be used outside of a fully protected battery pack. This is a 30T, believe it or not, rewrapped. Um, and uh, without, essentially, they don't want them used without the protection, the physical and electrical protection that a battery pack offers. So they've been getting more proactive. LG putting some warnings on the HG2 certainly, and it's been going on some others that we don't use as often. Samsung has been, I hear, very active in the UK with I don't know if they were formal cease and desist letters, but requests to please stop selling their loose cells. And a lot of that's because of the accidents that were happening, that vapors are blowing themselves up, particularly, what was it, 2018, when it seemed like almost every week, but there's still accidents all the time. Bill Tarling is kind enough to send me any reports of accidents he sees. I just got a report today of um, some regulated mod in that Rouleau RX200 shape, looked like dual 18650 kind of trunk, rounded triangle. All the corners are rounded. Grab. I don't know what to call the shape, like the Odin, the big Odin now, and the Rouleau. But a bunch of other mods have it, and that was fried. Now that could be maybe the cell. That's hard. The charging circuitry in the mod, or the AC charging adapter gave the mod something it didn't like. But this kind of stuff still happens. And so Samsung just says, look, and LG, it's a tiny market, vapors. We are a tiny, tiny market. And with huge liability issues. So they've started issuing warnings. Now, one of them, there's two sets of warnings on there. The first one ta-da, is this one here. And this one is part of an engineering change notice, or ECN, I believe it's engineering change notice, that was issued in June 25th. Now that one, the rationale for it, according to Samsung, is to inform and guide about the safely usage to prevent the misuse of cylindrical cells, round batteries, to prevent unexpected incidents caused by misuse. They do go on to emphasize only for use in battery packs only for use by battery pack makers or system integrators. If you have a medical device and has batteries, built inside, totally waterproof and protected, that's battery integration. No sales or distribution to online e-commerce or individual consumers. This has been true since the beginning, but now they're trying to emphasize it. And use for e-cigarette or vape is strictly prohibited. So they're calling us out separately now. And I think, in my opinion, that's because of the accidents that have happened. And what they're doing is adding that safety warning. Now, in the description section, for the original stream, I'll put it in this one once we get off, is a sample image that 18650 Battery Store was kind enough to send over the 30Q with a new warning. Essentially, that. Oops, is it yes, it is readable on there. And now that is certainly on the 30Q. I believe the 25R is getting it soon. And then around at least the first quarter of 2020, the Samsung 30T and 40T were also supposed to be getting the warning. So since it was last autumn when the 25R and 30Q got it, but it takes this long before we get the excess inventory, diverted shipments, whatever, it's namely what I call the secondary markets. So it took, over half a year. With the 30T and 40T, if they were changed in March according to this schedule, then at the factories, maybe by the end of the year, maybe before then, in autumn, we'll see 30Ts and 40Ts with them. Then there's another change notice that just came at the end of April. And interestingly, it has a different warning, slightly different wording on this one. Now, this one is for namely all the other cells. But it's curious that it's still not for vape, but they use different language. And that's really interesting. Maybe it was the lawyers who got together and said, hey, we need a slightly different wording on it. And they've already got everything set up for the 25R, 30Q, 30T, and 40T from last year, but for this year, they're changing the wording slightly. But this is for a whole bunch of other batteries, a few that we use a little bit, but most of them we don't. And for the 18650s, it's the 20Q, 20R, 20S, 25S, the 29E6, the 29E7, and for the 21700s, the 33J, very low current rated. Interestingly, the 30T and 40T also. So the 30Ts and 40Ts may have both of those warnings. So we can't use those as some kind of authenticity indicator because it may come in both versions. 48X, 50E, and the 50G. Now, some of those that we use. The 50G particularly I like. That's right now the best ultra high capacity 21700 out there. So there's quite a few cells being changed. Samsung's going to have two different warnings out there. It's going to be all kinds of confusion, I think, with this. I'm probably going to have to do some posts with some photos, or at least a separate video on that, just to document, okay, here's what you check, or here's what's coming and what's not coming. Now, as far as I know, nothing has changed with these batteries, these cells, except the wrap. Um, they were just they're adding it on here because they keep getting sued. In my opinion, this is why we keep having accidents, and we keep suing them or suing everybody. I've seen lawsuits where they just name all the major manufacturers, even if they know who makes the cell that blew up. It's just a lot easier, not a lot easier, but if you sue 10 people, odds are you can, that each person then is maybe would put up, 1/10 of what you're looking for. If you're looking for $1 million and you sue 10 companies or 10 people, then each maybe could put in $100,000 and you get your million. So they're more likely to settle. Where if you just sued Samsung for $1 million, they're going to fight you tooth and nail because it's $1 million lawsuit. But if their share is only 100 grand, they may go, oh, here's 10,000, take it or leave it. And you can get settlements coming out of that. So they just sue everybody and they see what sticks. 18650 Battery Store, the one who sent me a sample photo of their 30Q with a new warning, and other shops do not suddenly have dangerous batteries. There's nothing different here. It's just new printing on the wrap, as far as I know. There's no suddenly new dangerous chemistry here. These companies just want us to stop using it. Now, why not direct these at flashlight users and power bank users and everyone else? I can only guess, but I don't think they're blowing themselves up like we are. You don't see in the news now. It's not as quote newsworthy to say flashlight user, battery accident. Vaping battery accident. I think probably gets a lot more hits for an online announcement from a company, or a lot more people reading the article for a printed article. So I think they'll pay more attention to it. But frankly, I think the flashlight users, because you're just putting the cells in and out, you're not sliding them against contacts. Also, a lot of the flashlight users are very technically oriented, and they're going to be spending a lot more attention to the cells they're buying, the condition of the cells, where the average vapor just wants to freaking vape. I either want to stop smoking or whatever. And they're just not, particularly in some countries I've seen where there's just zero knowledge about the battery safety or anything, where I think flashlight users are going to be a lot more aware of things like that. They talk about it a lot more on the forums and stuff like that. Now, there's some issues. These new wraps are going to make it a lot harder for vape shops and online vaping vendors to sell these batteries. Because if it says not for vape and you sell it to presumably a vapor because you're a vape shop or a vaping oriented online website, you've got some real liability issues there, or certainly lack of insurance coverage issues if there's an accident with the battery. So I think shops and some online vendors aren't going to want to carry these batteries. Now, the ones who sell batteries, um, I think would have a lot less of a problem, because they just say, if you're a vapor, don't use these. And then you as a vapor can decide, whether you're going to take the risk or not. Now, I mentioned that all round cells were never meant for use outside of a battery pack, and that's true from day one. What of the 1990s, that these things were coming out. So we use them at our own risk. They're not unsafe, but we can never call them safe. They're not in a battery. They're not even completely safe in a battery pack. There've been laptops and phone accidents and stuff over the years. You've heard of recalls for laptops and phones. Now those were lipos, but still, it's a lithium-ion battery. So there's things that we have to do. And I've talked about this in lots of other videos, but just going to go down the list here quickly. What we use them at our own risk. It's got to be your decision. This is an unauthorized use. If you decide to use them, though, never misuse, 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 or mishandle them. It's funny how one word, like the word walk, for me sounded like the dumbest word I've ever heard. And I just walked around saying walk, walk. It just sounded like the silliest word ever. And then I never thought that again. Anyway, misuse, um, which for me means the electrically related stuff. Stay under the current rating, or never mishandle them. Never use them when hot or cold. Keep the wraps in perfect condition, and only use a good charger and only when you're around or awake. Just little things we can do to not add any risk on top of the kind of risk that's built into using a cell for something it was never designed for, with the positive and negative up the top there. And with that, those few little things, hundreds of thousands of us can go for years without ever having an incident. It's the people who push the boundaries. It's the people who use, without their knowledge, defective equipment. It's people who let the wraps get trashed. That's where the accidents come from. So it's not hard for us, I feel, to avoid an accident. The internal defect rate for a cell from the major manufacturers is astoundingly low. 1 in a million. I've seen 1 in 10 million quoted. For the China cells, I don't know what the failure rates are. So there's a lot we can do for these things, never be a problem, and for these warnings just to be extra printing on the wrap and nothing more for us. Nothing that would affect the way that we use these cells. And that goes for flashlight users, power bank users, and vapors. And that is today's topic. We can get back to checking chat. Got about 25 minutes left and seeing what everyone's saying. Chasing Clouds in favor of reviews. What's up? Thank you for joining us. Orthodian, Battery Mooch, would you recommend a good place to buy cells in the States? I've got a bunch of places listed in the original stream. It'll end up in this stream, but only because this is a replacement stream. I don't have my normal description section pre-filled out. But AT650 Battery Store, Illum.com, IMRbatteries.com, Lithium-Ion Wholesale.com, and many others. But I have a list of Oh, it doesn't, I think. Well, maybe 9 or 10 in the States, in the other stream, or in any of my videos. There's a list there you can check. Is Addy Tooney floating around? I see nobody vapes saying hello. Torsten Nestler, thank you for joining us. Commander Nebula, thank you for joining us. Scott Bogfoot, do charging also create arcing damage, or is it discharging? Um, Charging or discharging can cause arcing damage, but it has to involve making or breaking a contact. That's where the arc comes. If there's touching, there can't be any arcing because there's nothing to jump over. There's no air to jump over. So charging could cause, maybe if it's a really badly designed charger, when you put the cell in, there's a tiny little, tiny arc charging up some capacitors in the charger every time you pull it out. But I've never noticed that on any battery. It's the huge current jumps taken when you touch and release in a mech where you can get arcing damage. In a regulated device, you might see a tiny spark, some of them, because you're charging up some capacitors in the device. You might see that. But compared to what happens in a mech with current levels much higher, you really shouldn't be seeing it. But it takes a make or break of a contact to cause arcing damage. Saint Descender says we will see a bigger push towards internal battery mods, like all the AIO and pods, or battery packs. We'll just, if regulations start, if they start to go, hey, you have to pass UL 8139, 8139, 1839. Oh my gosh, how can I forget that? The UL safety standard for devices. They might go, hey, that's mandatory now, which will essentially outlaw in America anything that takes a replaceable battery, mechs, and certainly in other devices. But you'll be able to have a battery pack like the Anakin Disruptor, but hopefully in a more compact setup, or protected batteries. That may be allowed. But I hope not. It's just individual protected cells. You just can't get a good current rating out of them. Justin 1CK, battery space mooch, please, so I can see it. I caught yours though. Can you share your thoughts on the Panasonic NCR 21700A Tesla Model 3 cell with concave aluminum plus pole burst disc only? Did you test those? I informally tested. I don't remember them being called NCR 21700As. I thought that is for the Sanyos now, or Sanyo Panasonic, the same. They don't have that recessed top you're talking about. So I believe the Tesla cell is different. The Panasonic NCR 21700A is a separate flat top cell. But the one with the totally concave top, I tested them. The Teslas are a decent basic battery. Thing is, some of us think that the reason it is able to be concave top like that is because they're missing some of the internal protection devices they might normally have. Now, that also makes it unusable in a lot of regulated devices. You can't stack them. Some regulated devices don't have a contact long enough to reach down in. So I didn't post anything about them, or if I did, it was just a tiny little post, no big test report. But I'd say they're unsuitable for vaping just because of the recessed top contact and maybe missing one or more of the internal protection devices. Because Tesla packs have individual cell protection, as far as I know, or close to it, individual self-fusing. They may not need the protections or pay. They have to pay for the protections inside the cell. John Babes, Battery Mooch, I don't know if you answered my question about the VC8 wall adapter. Um, no, I didn't, because I didn't remember. I don't remember. I didn't say anything about a VC8 wall adapter. Please post it below with Battery Space Mooch in front. Everyone, Battery Space Mooch in front for me to be able to see it. Michael Taunt, my VTC5A from a year ago has a warning, danger, do not use outside battery pack. Yeah, Sony Murata had the warnings 2018 or something on there, and I think that was their response back then to the accidents. But they haven't gone after with letters and active things to the other manufacturers. And I think, let's see, LG is doing the warnings now on the wrap. Samsung is getting more proactive. They were pretty well the last holdout. Molicel would be actually the last holdout, but so far they're embracing us, and we're not suing them because we're blowing ourselves up. Joel Good asks, why shouldn't you charge cells in a mod if the mod has the capability? I use a charger, but I know some people don't. Well, it has the capability, but is it is it a reliable one? Can you trust it? Also, I like external because I I see more accidents with internal charging than I do with external charging. And the external charging accidents I see are often due to just bad wraps uh, going in and out of the charger because you can short bad wrap at the top, you can short circuit the cell every time you pull it in and out of a charger or a mod. I like using external chargers because you can select the charging rate. For a lot of chargers, the battery runs cooler because it's exposed and open. You can certainly measure the temperature easier. You get feedback about what's going on, temperature, stuff like that. Uh, and for me, a good charger on a non-flammable surface is just a better option for monitoring for life of the battery and things like that, as opposed to hoping your mod has a good charger because it's got a little tiny board in there trapped inside, and a lot of them get really, really hot, and you can't monitor the temperature of the battery. You may be able to monitor the temperature of the circuit board, one part of the circuit board, but none of them monitor the battery, except for the Sigeli Zephyr. Joel, good. Okay, got it. Scott Bogfoot. Do these warnings mean that the manufacturers are not liable if there's a manufacturing flaw in a battery because we vape them? Thing is, you bring up multiple issues now. You bring up a manufacturing flaw that was exposed through a vapor. Now, because vaping is an unauthorized use, that may completely nullify any liability because of the manufacturing flaw. Because once the battery goes up in smoke, how do we detect it was a manufacturing flaw? We can't. So all we have left is unauthorized use. Now, the manufacturer can still get sued. Anyone can still get sued. It doesn't matter what protections you have. The protections come into place once you get into court. And then you say, look, we said don't vape with that thing. And then a decision is handed down. If there's, let's say, a laptop battery pack, fully protected battery pack, and an internal defect, one in a million defect ends up, or just bad design, let's say, of the battery pack. You can have both of those lead to destruction of the battery pack. But let's say it's a one in a million defective cell, then you can say, look, we have a protected pack and a cell still went up in smoke. It must have been an internal defect. Maybe that they could win in court. John Bedinati with Super Chat. Thank you. Great info today. As always, thank you. Thank you for the Super Chat. I appreciate that. Tobai, these not working? Why two YouTube notifications? Well, maybe, but I had to cancel the original stream. So the new stream, the notification would only go out, if at all, right away. Justin 1CK, could you share some thoughts on UN 38.3 test results not being made accessible for manufacturers despite their obligation? Well, see, that's tough because they're not obligated to show them to us. They're obligated to show them to the regulatory bodies, authorities who request it. And I believe they have to make them available to the importers and maybe vendors who request them, but I don't think they have to make them public on there. Now, for those wondering, UN 38.3 test results are very basic test results just to say these things are safe to ship. They're required for certain shipping by sea, I believe by air, some or all shipments by air, but by ground and maybe some ways by sea, you don't have to have them. And it's really drop tests, temperature tests, and stuff like that. There's 7 applying to us that they have to pass. And I've tried to request them, and it's very hard because the importer exporters get them, but the manufacturers, well, all the manufacturers should have them, and I feel make them available. But like for the China rewrapping companies, it's like pulling teeth, mastodon teeth, if you try to get these test reports from them. Scott Bogfoot. If I'm charging a married pair of batteries and one finishes before the other, should I leave it until both are done or pull it out? Absolutely leave them in. It doesn't matter, married or unmarried, always leave a battery in until it's fully charged. And because they don't get remarried until they're both fully charged and at 4.2 volts. If you've got a married set and one finishes charging, the other one's still charging, and you pull them, you have just unmarried them because now one's at a different voltage from the other. You're starting at a different point, and then the differences between the batteries will make the difference between them even worse. Now, that may just lead to a slightly earlier time when the mod says, whoa, battery low. Eventually, though, it could become a slight chance of maybe a safety issue, particularly if you're doing them in a series mech or something where you don't get any kind of protection from mismarried batteries. So always for a married set, all of them have to finish charging. For absolutely insane, you charge, you want, no, it's not even worth mentioning, but just bring them all up to 4.20 volts, let them finish charging, and that way that rebalances their voltages and remarries them in case they discharge unequally because one's a little older than the other, one's just not performing as well as the other inside the mod. LK asks, what's the story on that everlasting cap? You always seem to wear only that one. Does it have a special history? It's just the Mooch cap. I like it. I've had it for about 10 years now, so it's just getting broken in. It's just my thing for videos. Some people don't know. Well, I'm sure a analyst would have something to say about that, but for me, it's just the Mooch cap on there. It generates lots of um, apoplexy and frothing at the mouth reactions from those who feel the brim is too bent and stuff like that, and they're always fun. So just something a little different than seeing my hair or what's left of it. Chola Ranch. Spender, is it necessary to use married batteries and regulated mods? I recommend it. You get better performance. You use an unmarried set, and whatever is the weaker of the two or lower capacity of the two, and you're done vaping. You've got to recharge now. So using married set gives you more vaping time. Slightly increased safety, yes, but better performance, more vaping times. That's why I always recommend them for any setup. John Vapes, other than longer charging time, does it matter what wall adapter you use with the XTAR VC8? Thank you for re-asking that. Uh, it shouldn't. I mean, as long as I'm assuming the XTAR VC8 is a USB input, not some 12 volt barrel jack, circular jack connector, but USB input. Uh, no, it shouldn't. But I would use the highest current rated one you can find, just so it runs cooler. Let's say you used a 2 amp charger and you've got 8 cells running. That little charger is screaming away at 2 amps, and you're using it 100%. So now you're stressing the heck out of the wall adapter. Lewis Knight, I tried to find some VapCell INR 2070s, but couldn't. I had to get some Sanyo 2070s. Is a problem with the VapCells? I don't know. Yeah, all the batteries they buy are in the secondary market, so it's really supply. They may just not have a reliable supply anymore, so they're not wrapping them, or they just ran out of stock and they'll have some in a few months. I haven't heard anything one way or the other, but the Sanyo 2700, excuse me, uh, wait, 2700. There is no 2070A. There's a 2700A or 2070C. I'm not sure what you're talking about now. Other name 1000. Reliable internal recharge would all but eliminate handling, essentially a battery pack. If if these companies said, hey, you know, well, I'm assuming the ones that have internal batteries have a higher quality setup because they know right from the beginning they're always going to be recharged internally because you can't remove them. I'm hoping, companies like Inokin and others, I would trust their internal charging, and you have to because you can't remove the batteries. Jason Barrow, would it be feasible to replace a 12-volt marine battery with a battery pack power bank, and how many milliampere hours would have to equal the run times? Well, you can just look at the ampere hour rating of your marine battery. I mean, some of these batteries are like 40 ampere hours, 40,000 milliampere hours. But the voltages don't work unless you go to lithium ferrous phosphate or lithium iron phosphate cells. The 3.6 volt ones, when fully charged, four of those in series cover a lot more of the voltage range of a 12 volt lead acid battery. If you use standard lithium-ion 4.2 charging voltage, you're either 12.6 volts fully charged, and now it drops way too low, or you're going to 16.8 volts, which is too high, and dropping down to around 12 volts. So with lithium ferrous phosphate, you can get 14.4 volt fully charged and 12 volts fully discharged. And a lot of people will use for those in series to replace lead acid batteries for automotive use, for boating use, for energy standby use, energy storage systems, and things like that. Now, for how many milliampere hours to have, typically a lead acid battery, you're only taking about half the charge out. So if you have a 40 ampere hour stack, or a battery, you need about 20 amp hours or so. But there may be some online calculators for that. I would say you want something, if you're going to the lithium ferrous phosphate, you want at least half the capacity you had for the lead acid. And then, or maybe use something else and saying, hey, I'm just going to make it the same size as lead acid because I don't have a lot of room. And you stop it at whatever that capacity might be. US 808. Am I okay using a pair of 30 Qs and a regulated mod at 80 to 90 watts? Okay, well, they're a single 30Q, 15 amps. You triple that for the wattage, roughly. So it's 45 watts each. So that figures you can go to about 90 watts in a two battery device. So you're not going over the ratings if you're using it 90 watts. It's using them hard though, and you still doesn't mean you're safe. You still have to make sure the wrap's in perfect condition, charge them well, and so on and so forth. But at 90 watts with two of them, you're still within the ratings of the 30Q. Dakota Simon, batteries should always charge at the same rate, correct? Mine always do because they've always been married, charged at 4.2 volts together. They don't have to, but it's a better marriage if they do. If you put two batteries in a charger, you charge one at half an amp and one at 2 amps. The 2 amp one is going to drop down just a little bit more in voltage versus the more slowly charged one. Um, it's just, I won't go to details of it, but just ramming more current in. The charge turns off at an earlier point, so it drops back down a little bit more. They'll still be fairly okay. I'm not too worried about like quarter amp, half an amp, half amp, 1 amp, but quarter amp, 2 amp, I'd be like, don't do that. Try to, it's always best to charge them at the same rate. That results in the best marriage. Axe asks, could you elaborate a bit about that curious case with the LG HG2, HGL, HG2L, and where those differ? I haven't found any difference. I'm wondering if those are just customer-specific HG2s. In my testing, they're identical. Their appearance, they're identical. All the flavors of HG2s, I just haven't seen a difference between them. Uh, Cells are often, sometimes it can be a tiny chemistry tweak for a particular customer, but otherwise, it may just be a particular wrap color that they want or a particular name that they want, either manufacturer gave them or they want. There may have been a chemistry change though in terms of life expectancy or something like that. But since I don't test cycle life, I won't know. And you have to test a lot of cells. You can't test one HG2L and one HG2, test the capacity on them and say, oh, I know what's going on, especially since the ones we get may be lower grades, may have been in storage for a year or two, or stored badly at very high temperatures. So we have to test a lot of cells on multiple sources to be able to compare them. But right now, as of now, I haven't seen any differences between them. B-Dog, when are the hats going on sale? I don't know. I don't even know if they sell this anymore. There's a website where Life is Good is the brand, is their character here. They had a whole series of T-shirts and hats and all kinds of things. I bought this in Bar Harbor, Maine, about 10 years ago. Love it. Had a T-shirt of those, but that wore out. Other name 1000. Didn't your policy change to only reviewing batteries with UN documents? Yes, but it has become almost impossible to get them. And what do you do then? Say, hey, no. And also, I have realized that the battery rewrappers, I could do things. Hey, you didn't get me the documents. Okay, only 5% of VapCells and nobody else's batteries can get tested. I'm realizing then that I just don't have anything to show anybody. And all I can tell everybody is, I don't have the safety documents. Don't buy it. Oh, well, I already bought it. People are still going to buy these batteries. It's something that I'm thinking about changing now. I'm screwed. Either way, I get absolutely slammed. I have, only two companies or something like that, and everybody else can go, oh, I don't know. They didn't have the safety documents. I don't know. I just don't know. Either way, it's tremendous grief for me, and I have to pick which grief I want to deal with. And I think it's finding out who are the people faking things. Now, like the material safety data sheets, it looks like a lot of them fake it. Do we not buy their batteries, or we just go, this is the way China does business, use them at your own risk. Here's how they perform. Or do we just go, don't buy 98% of the batteries that are out there? especially now that Samsungs and LGs, I think, are going to be harder to find. I can't just say, hey, no, don't buy 98% of the other batteries that are out there now that you can't buy Samsungs and Sonys and LGs and stuff like that. You can just say, oh, well, only buy Moly cells then. The trouble is Moly cells aren't available in a lot of places. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't have a good answer. Gormy Gorham, I always hear claims that Moly cells the only company allows your cells to be used outside of a pack, but I haven't been able to verify this. Is there any truth to this? As far as I know, yes. Moly cells the only ones who say, yes, you can use these for vaping. We support that. Everybody else, Samsung, Sony, LG, Panasonic, Sanyo, all say no for the same construction, same batteries. Um, it's just really an attitude towards the liability. The batteries are the same. Not the same, but it's the same construction. Lewis Knight, it was the 2700A. They are out of the 2700C. Okay. I don't remember what we're talking about with the 2700A. Oh, in terms of VapCell. That's right. They may just run out of stock. I don't know. I haven't heard anything from them about that. Jason Barrow, thanks. I'll keep researching it. Other name 1000, reliable internal charging mod, Mooch mod. It would have very reliable charging, and it'd be very expensive and probably pretty big. All right, figure one more minute, 2 more minutes, and that is it. Scott Bachfoot, what are your favorite museums in New York? Museum of Sex, the Metropolitan Museum, Museum of Natural History. I grew up there. I grew up in the neighborhood with the Museum of Natural History, so I was there all the time. And back then, kids, you just get in free. We used to play tag and manhunt and all kinds of games in Museum of Natural History. Uh, the Whitney, a little bit as much. Museum of Modern Art is a little further down there, but I enjoy it. But the Metropolitan Museum and then the Museum of Natural History are my two faves. Okay, last two questions. Justin, 1CK. European agreement on the internal carriage of dangerous goods requires manufacturers and distributors to provide a UN 38.3 test summary. But who would it provide it to? I don't think they're not required to provide it to the public. They're required to provide it to like the importers, insurers, and things like that. The EU has their shit together better than America does regulatory wise. And last question for tonight. Shepard Commander, regarding current draw regulated mods, as long as I run your formula and stay in the safe, does it matter? Does the coil resistance matter? No. Coil resistance has almost no effect on the battery current. It's the power setting in a regulated mod that is the thing that determines how much current is drawn from the battery. And with that, Mooch merch, Chola Ranch. I've been considering it, but I got to come up with images and logos, maybe someday, hopefully. And that is going to be it. Everybody, thank you very much. US 808 stack 26650 mech doesn't hit hard. You got to pick the right batteries on it. A good 26650s would hit hard. Stacked to 0.3 should hit hard as heck. So I'm wondering about your 26650s. Get better batteries, 18650s, 650s, or 26650s. Everybody, thank you very much. Yes, it is definitely that time. Dinner time, vaping time for me. Actually, after dinner, coffee and a vape. I'm looking forward to that with this Razhole and the Vindicator. Thank you for joining me. I'm sorry for all the troubles at the start. If this happens again, I think we're just going to pick a different day. Stay safe, stay sane, and take care all.